So it's an interesting thing that's happening. You know, we had the pandemic that started, and unfortunately that meant I couldn't drive my car. So for the first 8 months I had the car, I really enjoyed driving it. And I really liked taking it around to different places. And then I got sent home sometime in early March, and I've been home ever since. So it's been about 4 months that I've been home. So in that time, I've only been able to drive the car just about 1,000 miles. And 700 of those miles or so were taken on my 2 trips up to try and see the launch of SpaceX. So I've really only driven the car about 300 miles other than that in the 4 months that I've been home, which isn't very much. I mean, I got the car because I really wanted to drive it and have some fun with it. And now I can't drive it, and it kind of sucks in a way. It feels like, maybe I should have just gotten some other car, a standard gas engine, and just, been able to leave that in the garage instead of this car. Because it's kind of disappointing that I really can't drive it anywhere and I can't go anywhere. So that's something that's been kind of gnawing at me a little bit. Not that I'm really mad about it. I'm just a little disappointed because it was something that I really wanted to enjoy driving, and now I can't for now. And for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be working at home anyway, so there's not a lot of driving I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be home a lot, and that's going to mean that, at the end of the year, it'll be something like, 8 months of having driven it, 8 months of it sitting in the garage for the most part and acting as my mobile office, which is just kind of sucks in a way. It's just one of those things where I really wanted to be able to drive it, but I can't. So I got a little bit of, that going on in my brain, just like, wow, I'm kind of disappointed this isn't working out very well. And then I found out about the Supercharger miles. Now, the way the program works, when you buy a Tesla, if you have somebody who has a referral code, they get 1,000 bonus miles for supercharging, and you get 1,000 miles for supercharging. Now, I wasn't aware that they expired. Now, that's on me, I realize that. But the deal is that they expired after 6 months. Now, that's not really clear anywhere. They don't put it out on the website. They do, but it's kind of buried. And they don't really talk about it. And I had some friends who had their cars, and they never mentioned the 6-month expiration, possibly because they didn't know either. And I remember watching another vlogger who was talking about his car, and he had referred 75 cars or so he had 75,000 miles to use. And he didn't talk about an expiration. He was just really excited about having all these miles. And so it occurred to me that I never really thought about them having an expiration. But then in January or so, they changed the app to actually tell you what the expiration was, because before that, they didn't tell you what the expiration was. So that was added to the app, and that's great. That's helpful because that would have been nice to know early on. But because they added it, and I wasn't really, I'd already started to slow down my driving at that point. I was only going back and forth to work, and I hadn't really planned any trips, so the Supercharger was not on my radar particularly, so I never looked at it. You have to click to get into it to see how many miles you have left. So I never really clicked on it, and so I didn't notice. And then when I was at that Supercharger up in Vero Beach or something, and I ran into the guy who said his miles were expiring, I'm like, they do? I had a moment where I was really thinking about that because it didn't make sense to me because I had no idea. So they do expire, and it turns out that a friend of mine who I had referred the car to, he had used my referral code, and so I got some miles from him as well. Now that extended my date out a little bit. And it turns out that the extra, I think it was month or 6 weeks or something like that they added, Tesla gave you a bonus, basically to extend your expiration date. That did take me to the June 30th date because he bought his car a little later than I thought he had. But anyway, my miles expired on June 30th. So I was just kind of disappointed. Look, it's not a huge deal. It's a minor inconvenience, right? At 25 cents a kilowatt hour, it doesn't take that much to totally charge my car when I'm at a Supercharger. It's not that expensive. The maximum it's going to cost me is about $15 or so. It's really not that big a deal. But it's just the principle there, that they took away the miles and I didn't know it. So I wound up over the last few weeks trying to, use a few miles here and there and go and charge again. Even in my garage, I'd have it unplugged and just be sitting in it, so I'd be using some of the battery so I could go charge again and just take advantage of it. It's kind of trivial, I know, but it was the principle there. And it just kind of disappointed me in a way. It wasn't a huge deal. It didn't really make a difference, doesn't make a dent in my life that way. But it was another thing that just kind of sat on me, and I was like, wow, this is kind of disappointing. It's, disillusioning in its own way. That, here I can't drive the car and I can't have the miles, and, I don't get the little stuff. It's the little things that sort of irritate me, and it's like the $10 a month to get the premium connectivity. Okay, I'm fine without having the premium connectivity, but to be able to connect my phone is a little bit of a pain because you have to put the car in drive, then you have to do the connection, you have to find the Bluetooth. whatever. You know, it's just silly stuff that's a little bit harder than probably it needs to be, that just kind of is a nuisance a little bit. And then there's also the fact that I have an older version of the hardware installed in my car, so anytime I get an update, it doesn't have all the cool features. I can't see the traffic lights, all the other things. Now, in a way, I don't expect that because I don't have autopilot on the car. But in another way, I paid for the car, so it's kind of a, you know, one of these little things that just kind of go, yeah, it adds up, right? All of those little things add up, and it just has this feeling like, I feel like, I don't want to say buyer's remorse to a degree. I've said that word before on this video cast, and I don't really want to say that because that's not really what it is, but it feels kind of like that, just at this moment in time where I can't drive the car and all these little things are kind of adding up, and you go, kind of disappointed. This kind of sucks. So that's, you know, really my thoughts on this right now. I'm using it as my mobile office for the most part. I'm not really doing a whole lot other than that. You know, I do a little bit of driving around town when I have to go somewhere, take the kids somewhere, whatever. You know, there's still some activities going on, not many. Have to go to the grocery store, those kinds of things where I use a few miles here and there. But it's not a lot of miles. 300 miles essentially over the course of the 4 months. That's not very many miles. I mean, I've only driven 1,000 miles. I can't believe that. You know, I've only driven 1,000 miles in that 4 months, and you know, only 300 of them were, you know, actual miles around town. Just amazing to me. You know, so really not really driving the car. I get to enjoy it. You know, I can sit in it and enjoy it, and I can watch TV in it, and that's great. But I'm kind of missing out on something. So I guess that's, you know, that's my story, and it's not much of a story, but I just wanted to share that. It was sort of my pandemic related moment when I was thinking about the car and how it works. And that reminds me that I have to go and actually pick up my daughter somewhere. I'm actually somewhere to pick her up. So I am going to put on my mask before I get out here because that's where we are today. You know, this is what we do. When we go anywhere, we put our mask on, we go in, we do what we need to do. And I'd like to remind you, if you're watching this video, wear a mask. Let's get this thing taken care of. Personal to me that I can't go out and enjoy myself because we are all just letting this virus propagate. Wear a mask. It's not that hard. It's not that big a deal. I wear one like all the time now, and it's not that big a deal. I'm planning on getting a fabric one that I can enjoy. But, you know, right now this is who we are, and this is what we have to do. So wear a mask. You know, help me to get my car, get back out there again. Thanks. Anyway, if you like the video and you're planning on buying a Tesla at some point, don't forget to try and use my referral code. Hey, if you want 1,000 free Supercharger miles, go for it. And that is it. I hope you enjoy. Have a great July. Able to drive it. Now, I wanted to share with you one other little piece of information. I told you I was working on the idea for an app. What I wanted to do was create an iPhone app that actually looked at the data from the car and used it in some way, so you could take it and understand how your car is performing, maybe even against other people and that sort of a thing. We can have a little fun kind of building a community around it. And the thing I realized was it was a pain in the neck to always have to get the data every time I did the charging. I was doing some things where it was automatically getting some data, but it wasn't as simple as it seemed. There's an extra step you have to do, basically. I could write a little code around that, but to be able to do that, and also the fact that you have a token that you're given based on your ID, and I don't want to store that token anywhere. I had no interest in having anyone else's token. That's yours. You should guard it, you know, as a secret. So I didn't want your token. So I was trying to find a way to keep it in the phone itself so that you would never pass it anywhere out, and I would never see it, and it wouldn't go to the database where I'm storing the information, and that's a little bit harder than I wanted it to be. That, and the fact that the data wasn't really giving me anything meaningful. What I found was, no matter how I drove over the last year, I was getting 219 watt hours per mile every month from my car. So there was no variation in that. So, you know, kind of like, well, what's the purpose of looking at it? I was also keeping track of how many charges and what it cost me to charge, but I think there are other easier ways to do that than just going and getting it from the car every time like that. So I think I'm going to rethink how I'm using that data and what I'm going to use it for and what kind of an app I might want to build. I'm open to suggestions. If anybody has any suggestions, if you're watching this and you have an idea for something you'd like to see in an app, let me know. I'm willing to play around with it. It could be a web-based solution too, not necessarily an app, but I'm just trying to think of what the usefulness is. The other thing I was looking at was the amount it was costing me to charge, the watt hours per mile, and then what the battery life looked like. And the battery life seems to be very consistent, and everything I've read seems like it's very consistent. The only thing I've noticed is when they provide a software update, sometimes it has a huge impact on the battery life, the battery health. So that's that's because Tesla is doing something, not because I'm doing something. So I think for now I'm going to stop collecting that data and stop working on the app until I figure out what I really want to look at. I've looked at some of the other apps that are out there in the app space, and some people have some clever ideas for what they want to do, and it is community based, and that's pretty cool. So I may just switch and use one of those or do something else, but I don't think I'm going to continue to work on my own app and collecting the information the way I was. I think I'm going to find a different way to do it. Just my opinion. So like I said, if you have any ideas, let me know, because I'm willing to do something else. I just need to find the right answer, because what I'm doing wasn't the right answer. It was just more complicated, and it made it a little more of a pain. Anyway, just wanted to share that, and as I think of new things, I'll share them with you.